Hi everybody. So I forgot to record the beginning of this webinar. So this is me back at nighttime recording the beginning of the webinar. Someday I'll learn my lesson about that record button. So we are talking today about mitochondria and how they produce energy for us and how we mess up their game and how we can help support them. So it's a really interesting topic. I'm really glad you're here. We had actually a really lovely time on the live webinar, and you'll get some of the questions later. So if you're watching the replay, hello to you as well. My name is Bridgit Danner, and I'm at bridgitdanner.com and hormonedetoxshop.com. And this webinar was created for people who attended the Candida Summit and got a bonus from me. So thank you. This is just for you. And these are as I conducted a survey of your interest recently. You were interested in bloating, and I shared a video about that. And then you're interested in detoxification and energy. So those are two topics near and dear to my heart. So I thought we can make a little lecture about them. And this is actually my first time speaking publicly about mitochondria, and it was a ton of fun. So I want to do it again for sure. We go into a lot here, but there's still more that could be covered. I probably didn't cover heavy metals enough or mold enough, but I think this is a great beginning. So I wanted to start with a story of my own about my experience with mold and some pretty serious mitochondrial dysregulation. You may know some of it if you heard my lecture on the Candida Summit, but I'll go a little deeper today. So my lowest point with my mold journey was after we had found the mold and we started to remediate our home. And I was working from home then. I had just hired someone to replace me at my clinic. I was super excited about this new phase in my life. And then everything kind of hit the fan. I got a strep throat, and then when that got over, I was just so tired all the time, and I couldn't seem to recover. So eventually we found out we had mold and started tearing out the basement, and I was there in the building. And we were told it was being done correctly, but in retrospect, it was not being done correctly, both by us and the contractor. We were both lacking the information to do it properly. So this is an area that I really warn people about. Don't assume you just put up some plastic and everything's good. So if you ever want to ask me more about that later, you can. So back to the story, I was super tired even though we had found the mold, and I was doing IV therapy, and I just nothing was happening, and it was getting really severe. I was so forgetful that every time I had a thought, I had to repeat the thought 3 times. If I would think, oh, I need to email back so-and-so, I'd be like, what was I going to do? And then it would come to me, and then I would lose it again. And then it would come to me. I don't even know how I functioned. I actually ran a really big summit during this time just because it was on the calendar, and I felt like I just couldn't get out of it. I certainly wanted to do it, but I was so mentally slow. Everything took me 3 times. I was so tired that I would go to the gym, and instead of working out, I would just lay down on a bench and wait for the sauna to heat up and then use the sauna, which is good for you when you have mold. But I was so tired I couldn't exercise. And I'll talk more about how I did start to exercise later. At one point, I was just so forgetful that I had this important call and I couldn't find my phone. And I was circling the house, looking everywhere, and I had put the phone in a drawer in my kitchen. Who knows why? Just my head was out of it. And a lot of people say, oh, I have those experiences too. And you do, probably, and some of the reason we're going to talk about today. But really, it was at the peak. I was not that old, and I was going through this crazy exhaustion and forgetfulness that really probably peaked with me not wanting to wake up. Thoughts were going into my head. Maybe I could just take some pills and not wake up. And it wasn't a emotional desire to be done with the world. It was a physical exhaustion that was so deep that I just was like, all I want to do is just sleep forever. And that was a pretty scary thought. I had never thought about anything like that before. And I didn't act on it. But I told it to my husband, and he was also going through some hard things. He was like hallucinating on his mold. So, I just kind of want to show that this is an extreme example of mitochondrial dysfunction, and we'll talk about why it happens. But it's happening, I think, to everyone. Not everyone, but nearly everyone to some extent, every adult in our culture. Look around us. We're all like jacked up on coffee and energy drinks, and we're all tired, and our circadian rhythm is off. And why is that? Why are we so tired? And the answer is mainly toxins. It's toxins in our food and our water. We'll talk more about that. We're basically poisoning ourselves with modern life, to be honest. And we need to reverse it. And so I'm really glad you're here. If you're here, you're probably pretty knowledgeable. So we might hit a few points but I hope you'll learn some things because mitochondria are very fascinating. So what we'll cover today are what are mitochondria, why do they matter, what are the symptoms, how are they compromised, and then how to support them. So mitochondria are organelles, which are part of a cell that have a specific function. Just like the nucleus, there's the mitochondria. It's in every cell. It creates energy that the cell uses for its particular function in our body. 90% of the oxygen we breathe is used by the mitochondria. They take up 10% of our total body weight. So there's a lot of them. There's trillions of them. There are at least hundreds in every cell. There are more in some tissues like the heart and the muscle tissue. The heart is a muscle, but anything that's using a lot of energy, and the heart is one that does, there's a lot of mitochondria in there. The brain uses 20% of our overall body energy. It needs a lot of feeding, and so that's why we can have such brain fog and confusion when we have a mitochondrial problem. Mitochondria make ATP, which is a combination of hydrogen, phosphorus, nitrogen, and oxygen, which is used for energy. So all this kind of function of the mitochondria is what makes up metabolism. Metabolism is thought of about like how you gain or lose weight, or how fast you use calories, which is true, but it's also just how well do you function? Like, is your cell, doing its job and moving on to the next thing, giving you lots of energy? Or is it sluggish and backed up for some of the reasons that we're going to talk about later? So I think a lot of people who have a weight problem actually have a mitochondrial problem. So that metabolism isn't just slow from their genetics, although that could probably be something there. It's slow from this mitochondrial issue. So here's an interesting bit of trivia. Mitochondria used to be a type of bacteria like 1.5 billion years ago, when the planet was young, and they invaded into a cell through the cell membrane, and now they live symbiotically within our cells, which is very interesting to me. So mitochondria has its own DNA that's separate sort of from the cellular DNA. Its DNA looks a little bit more like bacteria because that's what it was. So probably the reason that bacteria hopped inside the cell is it doesn't have much protection on its own. It has a membrane, but it doesn't have like the membrane integrity of the cell. So it's susceptible to damage, and that's what we want to focus on here today quite a bit. Another thing that mitochondria do is perform apoptosis, which is when we kill off cells that are damaged. But when the mitochondria themselves are damaged, they can kill off cells that are healthy. And this is part of what's happening in autoimmunity when we attack our own bodies. There's an aspect of this in here. And look at autoimmunity, it's like on the rise like crazy, like completely crazy. So again, it's like, do we have an epidemic really of mitochondrial deficit? Another process that goes on is something called mitophagy, which is the killing off of damaged mitochondria, which is what's supposed to happen. And that will get reduced naturally with age, but you also will have less of it when there's mitochondrial dysfunction and damage. So if the mitochondria are kind of messed up, and then then they don't kill themselves off correctly. We'll learn more about that later. So some of the symptoms are low energy, autoimmunity, memory loss, chronic pain, headaches, allergies, indigestion, loss of muscle mass. Right, we learned that that's a big carrier of mitochondria. Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, liver disease, cancer, heart disease, diabetes. So if you think about diabetes, the pancreas cells have mitochondria. And if they aren't working properly, your pancreas can't do its job properly. So I'm not saying that these whole list of things are just from mitochondria, but you can see how they'd be involved, right? There's just like in cancer, there's a lack of cellular repair going on, or cellular, apoptosis in those cancer cells are, there's different ways that the body is like not processing allergens correctly. It's clogged up with toxins. We'll learn about that later. So yeah, I'm not saying like this is just, it's mitochondria, but there's always a deeper reason, which we're going to talk about next. And that is, how are mitochondria compromised? And there are 3 things that compromise mitochondria. Toxins, toxins, toxins. So I'm kind of joking with that, but it's really true. They come in so many forms, but really it's all toxins in one shape or the other that are damaging our mitochondria. So when we are having too high of a toxic load, it uses up our oxygen that we needed. More free radicals are produced, which damage the mitochondria. I don't think I got into that, but what damages the mitochondria are free radicals. And what is beneficial to them is antioxidants. So mitochondria are damaged by oxidation from free radicals. And then are we using our ATP to handle all these toxins instead of using them to make our cells work at optimal function? And then as our whole system kind of slows down and becomes sluggish, metabolic waste builds up, and then our organs can't work as well. So I think this is where I left off, so we can paste this together with the rest of the lecture. I better go record it. Okay, let me start over. So sources of pollution can be in the air with things that we bring in our house, particle board furniture, paint that we use. I was learning recently that even VOC paint, like VOC-free paint, is really not that great. It's still polluting. Things like vinyl shower curtains, smoke from any source, industrial pollutants, and then toxic mold, certainly in our home, which if anybody has questions about, we could talk about later. So air is a big factor, and it's not the easiest one to clean up, but we'll talk about some ways. Water is another big one. We just finally got a full system filter in our house. It's a big decision. It takes a while to get that, but things in your water can be heavy metals like arsenic and lead, can be things like fluoride, chlorine, pharmaceutical residues, plastic residues if you're using, plastic water bottles. And then food sources are many. Glyphosate certainly is hard to even avoid. I recently got tested and I eat pretty clean and my glyphosate was still high, so it's pretty disturbing. Food dyes, processed fats like synthetic kind of over-processed fats. Alcohol is a big mitochondrial killer. Sugars and any processed foods are hard. They're making more waste product for your mitochondria. And then there's medications to think about too, like antibiotics and statin drugs are kind of the two of the biggies that can affect mitochondria. So kind of that's a big picture. Some more specific things to think about are you not exercising enough, or are you over exercising? Not exercising enough, you're not getting enough oxygen to your tissues. If you're over exercising, you produce too many free radicals. Are you a shallow breather? Most of us are, right? We're not really taught to breathe deeply. So just doing more. I got some questions about, can breath help? Certainly breath work of many sorts can help, whether it's going to yoga or doing kundalini, just taking 3 deep breaths when you think about it. There's a lot of things we could do for breath work. Infections of all kinds create their own toxicity and burden on the body. So whether it's a chronic bacterial infection in your gut, which probably many of you are dealing with if you're on this call, a chronic fungal infection, which probably many of you are dealing with if you're on this call, so candida, chronic viruses. I have chronic Epstein-Barr virus, and I'm telling you, it's really hard to, I have to be really careful, because if I compromise myself, I can feel that virus come back and my fatigue goes way up. So all infections damage mitochondria in some way. Stress certainly puts different mechanisms into play that are not helpful for our body. And then just overeating or eating like processed foods. Again, every time we eat, it creates a body burden. We do need to eat, but when we eat more than we need to, just creates an extra burden on our body, and we work less efficiently. And then a topic that is brought up by the author Suzanne Bennett, and her book is called Mighty Mito, and I really recommend it, is the topic of fermented byproducts. How can I say? The byproducts of bacterial fermentation. So certain foods we eat ferment in our gut to break down, and that's kind of fine in a sense. But most of us have an unhealthy gut. So her theory is that when we take a gut that's imbalanced and not that healthy, and then we're eating foods that create gas as this byproduct, like methane gas, sulfide gas, that combination is too burdensome on the body. So when I first read her book and interviewed her a while ago, we did the diet she suggested. It's basically a low FODMAP diet, so reducing fermentable foods in your diet. It was actually really great. So I think it's something worth considering, or at least doing like temporarily, like an elimination diet, to see how your energy changes and how your gut does. Last couple things, UV radiation, not getting too much time out in the sun. And then poor methylation. So if you genetically don't detoxify well and don't methylate vitamins well, that can affect your ATP production. So if that's something that you have, we'll talk later about how to supplement for that. Okay, I'll take a little pause and answer some questions if there are any. So Kristen asked about the NRF1 and NRF2 activation with a supplement for those with autoimmunity. So I think you're asking about those two branches of the immune system. The one's more acute, one's more chronic. I'm not quite sure what your question is. So are you just saying in general what supplements might aggravate these pathways, Kristen? Maybe you can clarify a little bit more for me on that for cell repair. Yeah, it's obviously not an area I'm super strong in, or I wouldn't be thinking about it so much at this moment. But let me kind of look into it to give you a better answer. Oh, I see. I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to answer that question. I'm just seeing some studies on it here, but you're giving me something to learn about. Yeah, it's really interesting. Let me leave some research for you, and maybe I can put that on the notes. I'm actually going to bring someone on our Facebook group interviews soon who's more of an expert in this area of epigenetics and how to supplement for it. So this is like a good reminder. I was actually going to email her today and I haven't done it. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I'll keep going. So one thing I want to say here before we move on is find out your why. So we can do different things to boost mitochondria, repair mitochondria. But if you don't know why things are off for you, it's worth looking into. So like Kristen's bringing up a genetics point, that could be something to look into. Do you have an air filter? Do you have a water filter? Do you have, a foam mattress? Do you suspect that you have a bacterial infection in your gut? Do you know you have a systemic candida in your body? Are you addressing these things? Do you have the right tools? Do you have the right practitioner? Have you tried the low FODMAPs diet? Are you taking methylated vitamins? So really kind of look into all these things. I know we had gotten a question from a mom who she said her son had mitochondrial compromise. But yeah, I would want to know more about why. Okay, so some general ways to support your mitochondria are houseplants to clean the air in your home. Considering getting an air purifier. We used to have one and then it got mold on it. So you had to get rid of it. But these are big decisions. These are expensive decisions. The Austin Air is a good one. Trying to remember the other ones. Is IQ? It might be Austin IQ. There's one that was not recommended to me recently that I thought looked good, but my friend got it and she was like, no, it's not good. So there's some new technology coming out with air purifiers, but I don't think they're all tested well. The one that she got was called the Molecule, and she was pretty disappointed by it. So you can just look at like a HEPA multi-filter air filter for your home, especially for your bedroom where you spend so much time. And then if you don't have money for that right now, just get a lot of houseplants. Water purifier is definitely a thing to think about investing in. There are, I know the Berkey is popular now and it does do a lot of purifying, but it doesn't get as much stuff as a reverse osmosis water filter. So if you are renting, you could get one you can move around, right? One that's more of a pitcher or like a on the counter thing. And that's more affordable too. If you own a home, you can look into getting it for the whole house. The company I just signed up with is called Aquasana, and we've been pretty happy with it. A few more little things. If you have an attached garage, try not to hang out in there where the fumes are coming in and out. Try not to trap fumes in the garage. While you're driving, use the button to circulate air within the car so you're not pulling in exhaust. You guys probably know this because you're all super smart, but avoid plastic in your water bottles, in your kitchen, everywhere. Even when plastic is not heated, there's still a transfer into your water. So really just reduce it as much as you can. We got a question. Can you detox damaged mitochondria and how can you maintain it healthily? Yeah, we're definitely doing the prevention now, and we'll talk about some of the repair in a second here. Okay, so a little bit about food. Let's cover some of the obvious ones. You want to eat organic as much as possible. All that stuff that's sprayed on your food. is toxic for your body, and it's having to process it. So even organic food can have this residue on it because it's out in the air, it's out in the store. So wash it well. I hate washing produce, but it's important. Avoiding processed foods and sugars. You probably know this, but we'll just do a reminder. Seems like especially sugars are hard on mitochondria, and your mitochondria love fats. So we'll talk more about that later. If you want to consider some intermittent fasting or caloric restriction, that benefits your mitochondria. So intermittent fasting is just like 12 hours in between a meal. So it's either an early dinner or a late breakfast. And that's usually all I recommend, because if you've been ill health, it's probably too hard on your blood sugar to go more than that. And then caloric restriction just means, not overeating at the minimum. Just eating enough that your body needs to survive and thrive, and eating that nutrient-dense food. Ketones. Ketosis is very popular these days, but ketones are good for your mitochondria. They stimulate mitochondrial function and help purge damaged mitochondria. So I don't think you necessarily have to be a fully ketosis, diet. If that works for you, great, but I don't think it works for everyone. But you can still have a lot more fats in your diet and a lot less processed carbs. So you want to avoid processed oils. You probably know this, but you want to avoid canola oil. You want to avoid eating out because all the oil is bad, fried food. And instead, I love using pressed oils. So using hemp oil. There's a company called Perfect Press that I like quite a bit. They're online, and they have like pressed cumin oil and flaxseed blend. I think your body really eats up that fat well when you're dealing with mitochondrial issues. High quality fish oil, I'm a big fan of. When I'm going through a flare up of my mold stuff, sometimes I'll be doing 3 big spoonfuls of fish oil a day, plus some magnesium, plus maybe some phosphatidylcholine we'll talk about later. And it really helps just bring down all that inflammation. You might want to look into avoiding mold-contaminated foods like peanuts and cheeses, avoiding artificial sweeteners like aspartame, diet soda, and then eating more foods with high antioxidants like avocado, sprouts, peppers, wild salmon, walnut, blueberry, pecan. And we talked earlier about those fermentable carbs. So low FODMAP, I'm not going to go into it too much here, but you can look up a low FODMAP diet. When I first heard about it, I thought, it seems like such a pain, but it's really not that bad. There's just certain foods that have fibers that are harder to digest. Grapes, apples. I can't remember all the foods because it's been a while since I was strictly on it, but you just go to the store and you have your yes list and your no list. There's a woman called Kate Scarlatta who I like a lot, who does work on this stuff, and she has some checklists that you can print out. So I think it could be worth doing for a month. I think it's really worth getting off alcohol for a month. If you're in this state, I think it's pretty hard on you. And avoiding dairy, you probably already are, but lactose is a fermentable food as well. Okay, so one way to repair damaged mitochondria, someone asked about, is exercise. So increasing your oxygen helps stimulate that repair process. If you are in pretty good health, you can do little burst workouts, like 20 minutes of some hard, some rest workout. You can do that 2 to 3 times a week. If that's too much for you, just doing any exercise is good. So when I was my sickest, I definitely didn't like to exercise, but I sort of made myself just go to the gym and lift a few weights. And I will say it will make you feel generally energized. Now, some people may not do well with, some people feel worse after exercising. it could be, some of the stuff you're detoxing that goes on if you feel worse with exercising. But I say most people at least could take a walk. So start there. And if you can do more, like go swimming, go to yoga, go to Tai Chi, just, it's sort of counterintuitive when you're tired, but some movement does help cleave off the damaged mitochondria. So what happens is the damaged mitochondria will get pushed out, and then parts of the mitochondria that are still healthy will go together. It's pretty fascinating. And I think you really want to do that because, as I talked about earlier, that damaged mitochondria can reproduce. Okay. So any exercise will help that oxygen delivery, help move antioxidants around the body. I know someone who wrote in was an acupuncturist. I'm sure that acupuncture helps oxygenate the tissues in the local area. So I think that's good. Even things like massage, I think, could be helpful as well. Okay. Any more questions I can take? A little break. Someone asked about heavy metals in fish oil. If you're using a good brand of fish oil, you don't have to worry about heavy metals. There is a brand called Vital Choice, and I interviewed him. It just really depends, like the fish the water are swimming in. Do they do testing on the batches of the oils? If your company knows about those things, then they can answer that. So even a bigger fish like salmon can be very clean if it's in like pure waters in Alaska. Some of the smaller fish are cleaner because they haven't accumulated so many things. So yeah, I'm still a big fan of fish oil. I would just say do a quality product, and we will be carrying some fish oil in our store this fall. Okay. So for supplementation, I think your foundation is always to do a high quality multivitamin and mineral. Not from Costco, not from Trader Joe's. Buy it from your practitioner. If you are a practitioner, use your sources. You want to get enough magnesium. It's important for detoxification. If you're sick, you often need about 600 milligrams of magnesium, so you might need it in a multi plus a little extra. You want your B vitamins, your folate, and your B12 to be methylated in case methylation is an issue for you. The supplement that we'll be carrying this fall, the minerals have this certain, I guess you could say, structure where they're bound to amino acids, so they look like food to your body, so they come in better. So there's certain fats you need, certain vitamins, certain minerals. So just getting on a quality one of those every day, I think is a really important start before you do a bunch of fancy stuff. Moving on to the fancy stuff, a popular supplement for detox is glutathione. That's an antioxidant that is made in your liver, but you can take it as a supplement. Usually the liquid form is preferable. It can help with DNA repair, again, and DNA synthesis in your mitochondria. So you can look at that. Well, that's something we'll carry in our store soon too. And you can also do a coffee enema. Coffee enemas drastically increase your glutathione production every time you do them. I have a YouTube video on that topic. And another one is supplement CoQ10. We talked about earlier. So that one is needed in the ATP production process, and many of us are deficient. So that's one you can supplement on, and there's different brands with different qualities. I find if I take 400 milligrams a day, I think that's how much I'm taking, I can feel it. I can feel a difference in my energy. Phosphatidylcholine is kind of a fatty compound we mentioned earlier, and that gives some protection to the mitochondrial membrane, kind of helps fortify it, so that's pretty cool. Helps the mitochondria be able to function correctly and produce ATP. Then I wanted to mention essential oils because we talked about free radicals being damaging for the cells. So essential oils, many of them are very high antioxidant, like very high. So rosemary, clove, oregano, clary sage, myrrh, coriander, fennel, and cedarwood. Those are some I wrote down. There are more than that, but those are some that I like personally, and I think you could look into. You don't need to use a lot, but maybe massaging a little of them over yourself every day. I've been using like a lemongrass and myrrh over my thyroid lately in a carrier oil, and it's really nice. I love cedarwood. It's one of my favorites. Rosemary I love too. It's good for your hair and your skin. And it's good for autoimmunity and your mitochondria. So there's more I'll just mention one more supplement. I would say chlorella and chlorophyll. These are green foods that help oxygenate your cells. So if you don't tolerate full chlorella, you can just do the liquid chlorophyll drops. And I do those sometimes in my my morning kind of little detox drink. And then sometimes they take chlorella. I think it's a really nice product. It does give me loose stool sometimes. So in Chinese medicine, we say it's cold in nature, and that's why it does that. I don't know the other reasons exactly, but everybody's different. And then just a few last notes, and then I'll take some questions. There are some other ways that we can make energy that I didn't cover. Getting sunshine, getting your feet on the ground, being near moving water, being in nature. Many of these things are actually very healing to our cells and replenishing. Someone sent me a link about like an exercise you can do where you help your brain cross hemispheres, and she finds that energizing. Yeah, I think there's a lot of potential ways here to make energy, and we don't have to get locked into thinking it all comes from food. There's a lot of ways that we stimulate our body, right? So if we're at the beach with friends and it's sunny and we're in the ocean, of course we're going to feel better. Or you're going to feel worse in your cubicle at a job you hate, sitting down all day, right? So we can't always be on vacation, but we can seek out those things that just energize us and make us happy. Okay, somebody asked about my multivitamin and how do we know which one's good quality? That's a great question. So again, I would look for the B vitamins being methylated. So if you see it has folic acid, I would put it back because that's a cheap way to deliver that, and it's not going to work for many people. So make sure it's a methylated folate. And then I would look for the B12 being methylcobalamin instead of cyanocobalamin. Cyano is kind of the cheap one, and methyl is the good one. Other than that, how can you tell? I would make sure that fish oil is kind of certified and tested. I would only buy it at a natural grocery store, and then even still look carefully. And I would really encourage you to buy it from your practitioner. So I wish we had it available today, but we'll be rolling out a multivitamin soon. And some of the things I talked about earlier are what we looked for in a multivitamin. I don't think it has to be food-based. I think a lot of that is marketing. They just take a yeast and they spray vitamins on it, and they say it's a whole food source. So some really are whole food. They'll say broccoli extract or vitamin C from rose hips. That could be good. But if it just says food-based and it doesn't back it up, I wouldn't think that that's so special. I don't think it has to be food-based as long as it's pure and it's in the right form and it'll get into you. Often the bad ones will taste like fish oil when you burp. They'll give you an upset stomach. I can get nauseous really easily from vitamins, but when I'm on a good one, it won't do that. It won't make me nauseous when I take it. I can take it even on an empty stomach. Awesome. I know I had some questions that came in earlier, so feel free to keep writing, and I'm going to just check my email really quick to see the other questions. We love your feedback too. Is that interesting? Did you already know all that? Did you learn something new? Is it too much? I kind of put out a lot there, but I find that my audience is usually pretty knowledgeable and they want as much as possible. Kristen's like smarter than me. She's like knowing about genetics that I don't even know. So as I look this up, I'll just say that there's a couple other ways that you can get to know us. I mentioned that we're doing some interviews on our Facebook group. It's called Hormone Detox Tribe. And so I will share that link here in the chat. So we're doing some interviews on there, and if we come out with like new products I mentioned, you'll see it on there. We do a bunch of giveaways on there. Oh, thanks, Kristen. So it's a really fun group, and you've probably been to our site, but this is our main site, and then this is our new shop, Hormone Detox Shop. There's not a ton of supplements in there, but there'll be a bunch more this fall. I just have to go little by little. We'll have a good multivitamin. We'll have a good binder to bind up toxins as they leave the body. And we'll have a glutathione. Okay. So I think we talked about the woman who had a son with mitochondrial dysfunction. So I think we talked about some general ways to address it, Jill. I think we gave you a lot of ideas, but I would look at the source again, like where is that coming from? Why is he having this mitochondrial dysfunction? Karen asked about mold and mercury, that she's trying to detox from those so it stirs up her gut symptoms. Yeah, so when you try to detox from metals, you have to be really gentle and careful because a lot of that's coming through the gut and now it's irritating the gut and maybe feeding some bacterial imbalance. So you definitely need to use a binder. So a binder is stuff like charcoal, clay, citrus pectin, zeolite, and sometimes they're all mixed together to take those toxins out as you detox, and then just don't push it too hard. Some of those heavy metal like supplements are pretty harsh, so just be careful. And then mold, the bad news about mold is it's such a dysregulator to your immune system and your kind of your inflammatory systems that you usually have leaky gut when you have mold. It's like pretty hard to not have leaky gut. So I think what you're describing where it gets better and then it gets worse, that's been like my life for quite a while. It's really annoying. But you can, again, use the binders. You can use a good probiotic like Megaspore. We have that on our shop. I really like it. You just have to be gentle and kind of manage things. So I hope that helps. Mayor is the one about asking about acupuncture. Great. Yeah, I don't practice actively anymore, Mayor, acupuncture, but you know how Chinese medicine works. It's all supporting the body. So you're definitely supporting it with circulation, but as you do things like treat the adrenal or treat the kidneys or whatever you do, I think it's helpful. Whatever, however you're treating the root cause, I think it's really helpful. Chinese herbs, I don't use anymore. That's just sort of how my journey took me. But I did mention some supplements today. There are more supplements than I mentioned today, but that's a start. know if there's any more questions. Let me take one last look. That might be it, or at least all that I can find at the moment. Looks like a couple more on which water filtration is best. So yeah, I mentioned the brand Aqua Sauna, and I went with that brand partly because it's available all around the US, maybe Canada too, I don't know. So I didn't want to buy something that nobody else could find. So I've been happy with it so far. It's a bit of a pain to install, but that's because we have a whole house filter and we have all this hubbub. So the installation actually cost me more than the system, which is annoying. But you can just get a sink one. But if you're going to stay in a house for a while, I think it's worth it to install it in your whole house because you're showering in it, right? You're just like using water all the time. So our main filter gets out like 80% of or more of the junk. And then we have a little reverse osmosis remineralization unit under our sink. So all the water in the kitchen is extra clean. And I'm really happy about it. The water definitely tastes better too. We live in a place where the water didn't taste that good. What are your thoughts on diatomaceous earth for a binder? I struggle with very low minerals and found this has been life-changing. The others created inflammation. Oh, interesting. Yeah, is diatomaceous earth supplying you minerals? Is that what you mean? I didn't know that was a thing. I know that it helps for candida. I know that it can be very dirty because we used some recently that would made me feel sick. Oh, it's high in silica. Yes, silica is a high detox mineral. So it may be giving you silica and pushing out some other toxins. You buy Lumino brand. Let me look that up. Yeah, I had bought some that was good, and then we were thinking of using it again at someone's recommendation, and we already had some that was like, it was food grade, but it was junky. So it made me feel sick, gave me a headache. But yeah, this Lumino seems to have good reviews. So this person is saying they've tried a lot of binders. Yeah, that's interesting that they made you all inflamed. I'm not sure why that would be. I haven't found any binders that irritate me. Some people get constipated from binders. Obviously, that one I used gave me a headache, but that's because it was dirty. Trying to think. I've used some that just didn't seem to do much. So yeah, I think this brings up a good point that we're all on a very personal journey and not everything works for everybody. So we might have to switch around and find that. Yeah, I didn't know that that was high in silica. So there's some other like supplements that are high in silica, like BioSil. I know. Actually, BioSil gave me a headache once because I think I hadn't used it in a long time and it was pushing out some toxins. So yeah, we have to be gentle when we're detoxing. We have to make sure that our body systems can handle it, whether that's because our gut is healthy enough or just that we're on the right thing that our body likes. Awesome. Well, unfortunately, I did not record the beginning of this video, so I might need to record it again. But I really appreciate so many people coming on. It makes it a lot more fun for me. And I hope to get to know you more over time. I hope you can join our Facebook group. We have some detox training launching in September, so just keep your eye out for that. We'll do a webinar and some free gifts, and then we're going to launch a very affordable course. It's a $97 detox course. So I'm keeping the price down just to get as many people as possible. It's going to be called Detox Your Hormones. So it'll have a little more emphasis, a little bit on women's health and but not honestly like anybody could use it. But it's going to talk about the connection between hormonal dysregulation and toxins and how to approach it with food and supplements and cleaning out your house. So should be fun and a really great resource for people. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Monica. I know. It's so annoying because when I come on, it starts recording, but I'm not really ready. And then sometimes, like, by the time I'm ready, I forget to record it. So I can go re-record the beginning, but at least I recorded the end. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time for coming on. And it might take me a minute to fix this recording and make the beginning over again. So just be patient, and it might take an extra few days to get there. Bye. Thanks, Kristen.